A week or two ago, I made a video about why I invest in Puerto Rico. And I realized there were a few acts that I left out. And so I wanted to make another video to include those acts. And briefly, I might talk a little bit about the ones I talked about earlier, but I'll try to link so that you can go watch that video instead. So let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, so I've titled this Even More Tax Breaks in Puerto Rico. It is a tropical paradise. It is gorgeous here. It is a US territory. It is very close to Miami, just a 2.5-hour flight. It has the only tropical rainforest in the US, and it has 3 of the world's 5 year-round bioluminescent bays. And of course, Old San Juan, which is the oldest city in the US. It's America. We have a lot of the stores and restaurants and chains that people are used to from the mainland. It is a tax haven. There's something called Act 60. It was formerly Act 20 and Act 22 and some other acts that were all combined. But it gives you a 4% flat tax if you move a business to Puerto Rico and you export services. If you are an individual investor, you're able to pay no tax on capital gains, interest, and dividends. And I want to talk about the tourism industry. The tourism industry has not really been focused on in Puerto Rico historically. So it has less of the GDP coming from tourism as many of the Caribbean islands. The average GDP in the Caribbean is 15%. In the Bahamas, it's 60%. And yet Puerto Rico is only 7%. And the reason I point that out is because there's a lot of room to grow, and there can be a lot more tourism and tourism type economy that has not really been utilized yet. I wanted to mention the Young Entrepreneurs Act, because this is one I missed on my last YouTube video that I did. The Young Entrepreneurs Act is part of Act 60. It was formerly Act 135, but it's now Chapter 10 of Act 60. And it applies to people who are 16 to 35 years old. You have to be a bona fide resident of Puerto Rico. Really important aspect of this act is, unlike formerly Act 22, the Individual Investors Act, you can be a Puerto Rican resident. You can be in Puerto Rico, have never left Puerto Rico, lived in Puerto Rico your whole life, and start a business and utilize the incentives of the Young Entrepreneurs Act. So it's not for mainlanders, it's for anyone who wants to be in Puerto Rico or is from Puerto Rico who creates a business in Puerto Rico. So you do have to be a high school graduate, you do have to create a business. And the very, very cool thing about the Young Entrepreneurs Act is there is 0 tax on the first $500,000 of income or the first 3 years of your business, whichever comes first. If you want more information, you can go to the source, or you can just Google about the Young Entrepreneurs Act of Puerto Rico. There's also another act, which was formerly Act 132, might still be 132, I'm sorry. It was created in 2010. It was extended through 2020, and during COVID, it was extended another 5 years. No idea whether this will continue to be extended or whether it will end completely in 2025. But for right now, there is no tax on residential rental income. Now, that's huge. Can you imagine having a bunch of rentals here in Puerto Rico, in this beautiful Caribbean island, and not having to pay any tax on your rental income? The reason was this was a stimulus to make sure that people were still creating housing. You know, there aren't a lot of, or possibly any large scale apartment buildings and rental housing the way you see in many of the mainland cities in the US. There's just condos everywhere, and there's houses. And so, in fact, Puerto Rico has some of the highest, or perhaps the highest, homeowner concentration of anywhere in the US. So there's a lot of homeowners, not a lot of rental apartment buildings. There's some multifamily, like small multifamily, 10 units, 5 units. So this was created to make sure that there would be some inventory of rental property for people to live in. So this is specifically to residential, and it provides 100% exemption from income tax on rentals. So if you want more information, again, there's a source, or you can Google about the Rental Income Act 132. Next, we have tourism information. Now, this was Act 74. It's now also part of Act 60. You can get a 40% or 30% total project tax credit. This means the government of Puerto Rico is basically paying you back almost half of your purchase price and first year's operating expenses in order to create a property that is being used for tourism or even something that's not a property. So I put a couple images of boats on this PowerPoint. I know someone who is going to start a charter boating business in Puerto Rico. And so the government is helping to pay him his cost of his boat. And they're going to run a professional tourism operation using a boat and create some beautiful events. I don't know a lot about how the boat, how it would work with the boat, but I know that someone is doing that. I know a lot of people doing real estate. I've got an image here of the surfing turtle that's in Luquillo. That was recently granted the decree, and that investor got 30% of his investment back in the form of Puerto Rican tax credits. Those are then, you're able to sell them with your CPAs to Puerto Rican high income earners who need a break on their taxes. So they pay maybe 90 cents, 92 cents on the dollar, and you can sell those off to them. And then you can put that money in your pocket and get some of your investment back. So this Act 74, now Act 60 tourism credit is just amazing. It's a huge gift from the government of Puerto Rico. And I would encourage anyone who's thinking about opening a business or real estate. You have to have 7 rooms to qualify. So it has to be at least, it can't just be like an Airbnb and you're going to get this tax credit. It has to be a guest house or a boutique inn, boutique hotel, this sort of thing. But it's a huge benefit to Puerto Rico. Let's see what else I got in here. We've got opportunity zones. So 98% of Puerto Rico is zoned as opportunity zone qualified. So huge benefits of opportunity zones. In my opinion, it's better than a 1031. You can defer capital gains for 5 years, and there is 0 tax on the growth of the asset. And then you get to take the depreciation as a write-off, but you don't have to recapture the depreciation when you go to sell the project. These are projects that are best for a longer term hold. You're supposed to hold on to this for 10 years. You also get a 10% step up in basis. So there's some great incentives about opportunity zones. Another thing I didn't mention in my prior video was some grants that previously weren't available, and they're starting to get used in Puerto Rico. These are federal grants, and one of them is the CBDG. That's a tongue twister. Community Development Block Grant. So these are grants for providing low-income housing for low and moderate income persons. And it can be used for the acquisition of real property. There's also LIHTC grants, low-income housing tax credits. So these are 2 grants that if you are going to provide housing and you're doing some sort of development or acquiring an existing development and rehabbing it, then these grants might be available to you. There's been an influx of funds into Puerto Rico that really just started at the beginning of the Biden administration. So there have been like billions of dollars that have been released and are inflowing into Puerto Rico. And that's going to really change the dynamics of the economy in Puerto Rico. So it's a very good time to invest at the beginning of this wave that's coming. Airbnb, VRBO, short-term rentals. Short-term rentals are welcome in Puerto Rico. There are condo associations that do not allow them at all. So you really have to shop around and make sure, although there was a law that was passed late 2020 that said condos and HOAs could not ban short-term rentals unless it's in the bylaws. So many of them do have it in their bylaws. So if you're just looking to get a condo in San Juan and rent that out, most of the condos that I've seen actually do not allow short-term rentals, but there are some that do. And of course, if you have a house that's not in an HOA, then you can have an Airbnb there or have a multifamily. So we actually put a couple Airbnbs online. My son started 2 Airbnbs last week. He posted them around lunchtime on Friday, maybe at 11 o'clock in the morning. By noon, one was already booked. By the afternoon, he'd already had 5 inquiries. There's just not enough short-term housing here. So it is a huge, huge opportunity for people who want to get into that space. I wanted to do a little case study of a project I'm currently working on. This is going to be 4 units. It's currently like a house, duplex, triplex. So the unit mix is a 3+2 on the ground floor, a 2+2 above that, and then 2 studio units over the garage. The purchase price is $405,000, and there's about $100,000 worth of rehab that needs to be done to make it livable. There's 3 partners in this deal. One of them is a passive investor. Passive investor plans to use his Roth to lend the money to purchase the property and to do the rehab. The 2 active investors are going to be managing the construction and the Airbnb and outfitting the places, and I'm one of those active investors. So we will be paying 10% interest only to the Roth investor, the money investor. And then once it's stabilized, rehabbed, and rented out, we will go back and refi this. And the intent is to get all the money back and make the Roth investor whole. If not, we'll have to pay him back out of the proceeds, but we expect with the ARV being in the 700,000s, we should be able to do that. So we estimate that the mortgage at 4% principal and interest, and this will be fully amortized based on a 30-year amortization, about $2,400 a month. The gross income with an 18% vacancy, estimated about $19,000 a month. I put the numbers down below as to where we got the rentals, the ADR. The expenses, supplies, insurance, maintenance, utilities, etc., about almost $1,500 a month. And I did estimate property management in there, about 20% for short-term rental property managers. These are more expensive than long-term renting. So the net operating income of just under $14,000 a month after the mortgage gets paid, cash flow of $11,000 and change. Now, what we've agreed to do is pay the Roth investor back, not pay him back, he's been made whole by the refi, but we will continue to pay him 20% of the net operating income forever. So he will not only be made whole by getting his money back in the refi, but he will get approximately $2,300 if our numbers are correct until we sell this property. And so that's just an infinite return for him and for the 2 of us that are actively working on this project and overseeing the construction and the property management and all the day-to-day operations. We are able to get into this property without putting money out of our pocket. So it's a win-win for all involved. There's some more details to this particular example, but I wanted to make it sort of an overview of the sort of projects I'm working on. So this is one of the ones we currently have under contract. And I just want to say that I'm looking for credit and equity partners. I'm looking for other people who have Roth or 401k or IRA money that they want to invest, and maybe they want to stay in the mainland, but they want to utilize some of the tax incentives here and the tax breaks and the wonderful opportunity of having a property in the Caribbean that they can, of course, come visit and have a tax write-off to come visit as a business expense their property in Puerto Rico and check on it, maybe stay in it. So if you'd like to reach me, this is my email, catherine.moray@gmail.com. I am one of the founders of the Real Estate Investors Association of Puerto Rico, RIA Rico. We meet on the 4th Thursday of every month. It was on the Wednesday, we just changed it. So on the 4th Thursday of every month, we have a real estate meetup. It's in Miramar, it's in the San Juan area. If you are traveling to Puerto Rico, please try to plan your travel around the 4th Thursday of the month so you can come by and go to our meeting and say hello to us. So I look forward to meeting you if I haven't yet. Thank you.